Hey everyone, and thanks for joining me in this workshop on time management. So today we're going to be talking about time management, and hopefully by the end of this presentation you will understand the importance of effectively managing your time in college and the challenges that you'll face as a student. You'll learn how to discover your own difficulties with time management and how to set time management goals. You'll learn skills that will aid in making effective time management a habit, and you'll learn the importance of striking a balance with your schedule. So now we're going to talk about the importance of time management in college. And so one of the biggest things is that college is usually the first time in a student's life that they've been solely responsible for managing their time. A lot of people had parents or friends or whoever, throughout high school that would sort of keep an eye out on, certain responsibilities that you had, whether that was your job or your school or whatever the case may be. And so now in college, this is usually when people sort of are, completely on their own as far as managing their time. And so, along with that, the repercussions of poor time management are going to start to affect you more, now that you're considered an adult, right? And so, when you were a kid, it was, if you were late to something or turned in something late, it might not have been the end of the world. But now that you're in college, things are serious and people will want you to have things done on time and turned in on time and things like that. So your success in college depends on being able to adopt good time management skills. That's fairly straightforward. If you have good time management, things will go a lot easier for you than if you have poor time management. And the habits that you develop in college, might stick a little bit easier than they would, if they're in high school or something like that. And so, you want to get into the groove right now of having good time management, so that, later on when you're in a career or, maybe in graduate school or something, you've gotten all of the kinks worked out in managing your own time. So these are some of the challenges that students face with managing their time in college. And so one of the biggest challenges is that students are completely in control of their time now, and you can spend it however you want, right? So, and along with that, usually when people get to college, it's a sort of large amount of free time that they didn't really have before, especially if you, say, moved out of your parents' house and you're living on your own for the first time. That can really be a sort of jarring experience, and especially from a time management standpoint. I know when I moved out, I was sort of amazed by how much time I just sort of had, and I didn't have any responsibilities. I didn't need to be home by a certain time for dinner, or I didn't need to, do this and that. So those two together can really catch some people off guard, and it can make any sort of, minor pre-existing time management issues they had really stand out. Also, if you are juggling a lot of responsibilities now, some people work a lot while they're in school, commit to a bunch of clubs and social obligations, and obviously have their homework in school to study for, and that can really be difficult when you're trying to prioritize all of those tasks and responsibilities that you have. Also, students now are usually the ones who know about the responsibilities they take on. So, like, say in high school, maybe your parents would have had some idea of the assignments and things you need to do. They could at least ask you when you came home, do you have anything to do tomorrow? But now, your parents aren't calling you every night to ask you. Hopefully, they're not calling you every night to ask you, what you need to be doing if you're managing your time well. They don't know your work schedule. So all of those things can, catch people off guard really when they start trying to do all this on their own. And one other facet of that is people who had helicopter parents when they were in high school, actually sort of a detriment to the students when they get into college, because the students never learn to self-regulate on their own. They always had their parents sort of there, hovering around them and making sure that they accomplished all of their tasks on time and things like that. So that can definitely be a challenge that students face when they get to college and they just never developed that skill to begin with. So now we're going to just talk about some of the first steps that you can take when you're starting to try to manage your time. And so the first one is to sort of figure out what your time struggles are. And so a person's difficulties with time management can vary drastically from person to person, right? So some students can find that they, have too many distractions during the day. Some people can find that they just sort of have a hard time bringing themselves to do a task, and other people, might have too many responsibilities. If you are an athlete, you've got practice and school and maybe work and uh, all these sorts of things. And so, there's no one size fits all when it comes to time management. And then you also want to be honest about how and why you have these time management issues, because that'll make it a little bit easier when it comes time to solving them, right? And one thing to keep in mind is that procrastination in and of itself is not a time management issue. Procrastination is when you intend to do something but don't do it. And that could be anything, right? And usually, people who are just solely procrastinators know how long something will take them to do, and they just wait until the absolutely last conceivable moment to do it. When we talk about time management, it's really a matter of not spending your time wisely, or not scheduling your time properly, or having too many balls in the air, things like that. And so that's just something to keep in mind. So one thing to consider when you are trying to make time management goals is to find out where you're wasting time. And so leisure activities are not waste of time on their own, right? Just because you have a hobby doesn't mean that you're wasting time doing that hobby. But one thing that can really help with this is to keep sort of a daily journal and note what you're doing, whether it's leisure or work, and then how long you spend doing that thing, right? And so you want to pay attention to areas where you're spending more time than is necessary, right? So everyone thinks going to lunch is necessary, and yes, eating lunch is necessary. But if you end up realizing that you're spending 2.5 hours hanging out in the lunchroom with your friends, maybe that's one place where you could conceivably get some more work done, or do something a bit more productive. And conversely, if you find that you're if you're one of those people who has too many responsibilities, then maybe if there's areas where you didn't realize you were spending so much time with one school class and working on it, and you've been neglecting the others. And so that might be another example of areas where you're not spending your time as well as you could be. And you can get a lot of information out of this journal. Maybe there's a location that you get stuck in every day. Maybe you go to print something out at the library and end up sitting there and chatting with whoever for an hour or two each day. And so that might be one thing to try to avoid or keep from happening. And maybe you're feeling drained by the end of your day, and so you look back at your journal and you have 800 different responsibilities that you took care of that day. And so that would be another thing to pay attention to when you do this journal. So the next step towards making a time management goal is sort of listing your personal goals. And so you want to have a good understanding of what your personal goals are. And so those can be big goals and small goals, like micro and macro. So a big goal could be, studying more effectively so you get B's on all of your exams, right? A small goal could be something like finish this paper in time to get comments from a tutor before the date it's due, because normally I am finishing my paper the morning of, and so this time I want to have that time to rewrite it and edit it so that I can get a better grade on it. And so you want to keep both of these things in mind. It's good to have both kinds of goals. The big goals are obviously going to be more difficult, but will give you more more meat, I guess, to work with when you're trying to come up with time management goals. And so, those aren't bad to have an idea of how you want to do in each of your courses and things of that nature. And so when you're thinking about these personal goals, you want them to be SMART goals. And so if you haven't heard of SMART goals, that means that they're specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. And so that means that by specific, they are dealing with a specific course, right? So I want to do this much better in my Bio 2 class, as opposed to like, I want to do well in my classes, right? That's not specific. They're measurable, so how are you measuring it? Are you increasing your grade by 5% by, the midterms or something like that? They're attainable and realistic, and so that means that, it's possible for you to do this thing, and you have the means necessary to complete it, and they're timely. And by timely, it just means that it's on a clock, right? So I want to do this 2 weeks from now. I want to have this goal accomplished by the end of the semester. I want to have this goal accomplished by midterms. And so if you can get a goal that is all 5 of those, then you're really on the right track. So now we're going to talk about setting time management goals. And so your time management goals are going to relate to how you spend your time accomplishing your personal goals. And so if your personal goal is to get an A in math, then the how would be, studying for an hour after class, after every class. And so that would be your time management goal. For the next 3 weeks, I will study for an hour after every class and hope to get, an A on my next exam or something like that. So a good first step for these time management goals is determining where you're wasting time and then correcting those areas. And so that's what we mentioned a little bit earlier, but finding those places where, you aren't spending your time as effectively as you could, and then remodeling those areas into more efficient uses of time. You want to make sure that your time management goals are realistic, and so nothing's going to get you to start falling back into your old habits than stretching yourself too thin. And so, if you say, oh, I'm going to study for 8 hours every night, and then I'll give myself 30 minutes on Saturday and 25 minutes on Sunday to relax, and then I'll be back to studying. And so obviously, that's sort of crazy. But you want to, make sure that it's something, you might want to challenge yourself to be as efficient as you can, but, don't set any sort of insane goal for yourself that you're never going to be able to reach. And so making these goals, you want to do things that will help set up positive habits, right? And so, you don't really want your time management goal to be to cram for your exam the 2 days before it happens, right? You want to set up a sort of routine that will enable you to succeed. So, something like studying after every class, or maybe seeing a tutor Tuesdays and Thursdays, or something along those lines, that cements the sort of working mentality into your everyday. So now, and most of what this presentation will be, is talking about different time management skills. And so these are things that will help you along the way as you're trying to accomplish your time management goals. And so one of the first things that's really important is to organize everything. So for some students, the reason that they spend so much time on any given task is that they're not organized to begin with. And so when you organize elements of your life that relate to school, it'll make managing your tasks a lot simpler when it comes time to perform them. And so, what that means is that you're not wasting time trying to figure out where you're supposed to be, or trying to figure out where this paper is or where these notes are. And so when you sit down to study, you'll know exactly where everything is, and you'll be able to just start studying right when you mean to, and not 15 minutes from then. And you want to schedule on the large scale, or organize on large scale and small scale, right? And so large scale, you want to organize your schedule and have it make sense. You want to organize your classes so that they can match your schedule, and you want to organize your involvement. And so what that means is just sort of scheduling it smartly and having it fit into the rest of your responsibilities. And then on the smaller scale, you want to organize your papers, your notes, your backpack, and your workspace and your dorm, just so that will allow you to begin these things and know where all of your paperwork and things like that are. So the next thing we're going to talk about is prioritizing. And so when you're feeling overwhelmed by a large number of tasks, it's really important that you're able to prioritize those tasks. And so one of the main ways that people will prioritize is by determining how urgent something is and how important it is. And so urgency means how soon do you have to complete the task, and importance is how important is it in relation to your personal goals. And so you want to complete tasks that are urgent and important first. So, if this is if you have homework or a reading that's due tomorrow, it's important, to your goals of doing well in class, and it's urgent because you have to do it by tomorrow, right? And so that would be something that you would prioritize first. And so there's this little matrix that you can follow if you're trying to decide on something. And so something that is important and urgent would be sort of like the homework and exam the next day. The next thing you want to do are important things that aren't urgent, and so this would be something like say registering for classes. You have however many weeks to register for the next semester, so it's not really urgent, but it is still important to you. The next, you would want to do things that are not important but urgent, and then lastly, you want to do things that are not important and not urgent. And so this is a really good way to think about how you spend your time and what tasks deserve the most of your attention. Another important skill is to learn to say no. So some students will set themselves up for time management troubles by committing to too many responsibilities and activities right off the bat. So if there's all those students that will get a job on campus and join every club in the book and help out their professor and do this, that, and the other, and go to events and hang out with friends, and never seem to have the time to sit down and study and things like that. And so it's really important to just learn to say no to people sometimes. There's always going to be something going on campus. Your friends will always be there. So saying no this one time when you really need to is really important. And the first time's the hardest. Once you let your friends know that your school's a priority, they'll understand that you're busy, and it'll be easier from there. So another really important thing with time management is eliminating distractions. Everyone has different distractions. For some people it's their phones, others it's their computers, or for other people it's the people around them. You want to think about the last time that you were being productive and stopped, right? And so what was it that stopped you from accomplishing that goal? And you need to be honest about, what is distracting you from these things. Usually our distractions are our favorite pastimes. And so it can be sort of hard to eliminate those things from your life, and you're not really trying to. You're just wanting to manage your time so that you have the time to do both, right? So you want to be focused on one and then allow yourself that leisure time, and not feel the need to always be distracted while you're trying to study, or whatever that case is. And so once you've identified these distractions, you want to think about how you eliminate them while you're working. And so maybe changing your environment or turning off your phone or things of that nature could be beneficial for as long as you're working, right? And then when you're done working, then that you don't have to to stop that anymore. So a really simple way to manage your time is to make a list of all of your tasks and create a to-do list. And then you want to sort this to-do list from highest priority to least priority, and you can use that matrix that we were talking about a little while ago. And then once you also know your time management goals, this is a good time to break those down into little individual to-do list items. So by the end of today, I'm going to study for an hour. After lunch, I'm going to write the first page of my paper, and I'm going to do something else, right? And as you complete tasks and get used to the habit of using your to-do list, it'll feel better and better and motivate you to continue working hard. There's tons of apps for that are to-do lists that are paid and free. The one that I use is called AnyDo, and it's just a really helpful app that will keep track of all of your tasks, and you can just swipe and check them off, and it'll remind you if you are about to if your time's running out on something that you need to do. And then if you're constantly forgetting things, I think that's one of the best ways that a to-do list helps you, is that you just have that list right there of all the things that you need to do. And so if you're ever sort of at a loss, or if you're just sort of checking through your phone every day, you might want to just check your to-do list and look at all the things that you need to do, and you might be reminded of something that you'd forgotten about. So along with that, you want to take advantage of all the technology that's out there. There's tons and apps of tools that you can get on your devices and online that'll help you to manage your time. And so one really simple thing is to take some time at the beginning of the week and set phone reminders for when you want to get your work done and start working on tasks. There's extensions for Chrome and Safari that will block distracting websites. So when you need to work, you can turn those on. And there's hundreds of calendar and time management apps for your phone that can help you keep track of how you spend your time and what you need to work on. So another really important part of time management is establishing routines. And so these positive time management skills don't just happen overnight. You don't just immediately become a to-do list guru, or really efficient at managing your time. And so it really takes getting in the habit and employing these skills on a repeated basis to get to the point where you're consistently managing your time well. And it's like any skill, the more you work on it, the better you'll become, and then these routines will sort of start to cement themselves, and you won't even really see it as a time management technique. It'll just be sort of how you operate as a student. So it can be really important to set time limits for yourself as well when you're working. No matter the task, if you get in a habit of setting a time limit, it will help you know when you'll be finished. And so this is important for tasks that are not related to your goals, because when you know you're finished, it'll be time to do something productive. So you'll set that time limit. I'll go play basketball until 8 o'clock, and then at 8 o'clock I'll get home, shower, and start working. Unless and another way of saying that would be if you didn't set a time limit, it would just be, oh, I'll play basketball until I get tired, and then maybe I'll come home and shower and start working on stuff. But who knows when that's going to be, right? And so if you set that time limit for yourself, then it'll really give you more incentive to follow through with your action. It also helps when you're working on schoolwork. And so if you say, I'm going to work on this paper for the next hour, and then after that I'm going to take a break and go grab lunch or something. And so this can help make your task seem a lot less daunting, instead of just sort of randomly sitting down to write your paper and having 10 unwritten pages in front of you. You're sitting down for an hour to get as much work done as you can, and then when that hour is up, then you get to take a break. And if you're working on something really difficult, taking those scheduled breaks can be really relieving, and they can give you time to sort of cement the ideas in your brain when there's no pressure on you. So when you're working on managing your time, you also want to make sure that you're spending your time wisely. And this means that when you sit down to work on a task, you are being as efficient as possible with your time. One important step, or thing to take away from this, is that you're not focusing too much on minor details. So sometimes people will sort of spend all of their time working on one little tiny aspect of a project when they still have 80% of the actual project to get done, and so they're wasting hours agonizing over something that really won't have too much of an effect on the overall product, when they could be focusing more on getting the whole thing done, and then sort of looking at the details after the fact, right? And so these are the sort of things that you want to take into consideration when you're thinking about managing your time. And one of these things, one of the things that you can do to help spend your time wisely is to be more prepared. Get all of the notes and information ready and organized ahead of time, so that you don't, spend a bunch of time searching and waiting, and you're not, starting your paper half an hour after you intended to start it just because you couldn't find the information that you needed. One last thing to consider with time management is, your time on and your time off. And so when you begin working at managing your time, it can really be easy to overbook yourself, right? And set up this sort of crazy plan where you have, 15 minutes here to relax and 15 minutes here to relax, and that's it, right? And so you want to have enough leisure time scheduled into your schedule so that you can, relax and recuperate from work. And not giving yourself that time is a really easy way to get burnout. And so, if you're burnt out, you're just not doing anything right. And so that can be even more detrimental than not trying to manage your time in the first place. And so the key is balance, and it takes a little time to get it right. It might just be that if you find that you're constantly burnt out, then maybe you do need to reassess your time management goals. Maybe you did make some sort of crazy plan for yourself that might not be, practical. And if you're having trouble with this, a great resource is the academic coach and PAL coaches in the cave. They can sit down with you and look at your schedule and help you determine if the goals that you're setting for yourself and the way that you're achieving those goals are realistic, and if they'll be actually beneficial to you. And so they're a great resource for trying to figure all that stuff out. So really quickly, in summary, you want to develop smart time management goals based on your own personal goals. You want to prioritize those tasks based on how urgent and important they are in relation to your time management goals. You want to practice different time management skills in order to make managing your time effectively a habit. And you want to strike the balance necessary between work and leisure in order to maintain your schedule and avoid burnout. And so, time managing is it's not the easiest thing in the world, obviously, but it is really important to get in the good habits now, especially, when you're first starting off in college, because it's only going to sort of ramp up from here. Your assignments are going to get longer, your exams are going to get longer and more difficult. And I don't say that to frighten anybody, but it is the reality of your undergraduate education, and especially if you go on to graduate school, that you want to have these routines and habits in place before things get difficult and you're not scrambling to try to figure out how to manage your time when it's already, you've got a bunch of responsibilities weighing you down. And so, yeah, that's the presentation. If you want to come speak with me or a PAL coach, we'll be in the cave. You can just stop by, say, I have 100 time management questions. Please illuminate the answers for me, and we'll all be happy to help. Or if you have any questions, you can always email me. I'm at eric.bryan@stleo.edu, or I'm in the cave, so yeah, drop on by. Thanks for joining us.